Hello and welcome to another episode of Attacking Third, a CBS Sports soccer podcast. I'm Sandra, lead writer for CBS Sports, joined today by my homie, Lindsey, former USWNT midfielder. On this segment, we're going to be chatting a bit about the United States Women's National Team roster drop ahead of the April friendlies. Before we start taking a deep dive into the names and everything else, a quick reminder to follow us on Twitter for all news and updates at Attacking Third. We also have a TikTok. You can watch cool highlights. You can watch breakout videos of me or Lisa, or maybe we'll get Lindsey or Lori here to do some. I don't know. We'll see. But either way, go follow our new TikTok. And if you're joining us live on YouTube, welcome. Drop us a comment. Some of you are already doing that, so thank you. You've been hanging out, waiting for us to go live and get our takes. And let's go ahead, jump right into them. Lori, how you doing today? I'm glad to be able to do this with you one more time.
Yeah, great to see you. Thanks for having me on. Always fun chatting. And yeah, I say yes already to the TikTok. So
we'll have some fun with it. Maybe we'll plan some content planning for it. But we gotta chat United States Women's National Team. We're going to start introducing a lot more of these types of segments. You and Lisa already threw down on a really good episode talking about the United States Women's National Team Hour. We're going to have some more of that moving forward this year in 2022. So not only did we kick off our first United States Women's National Team Hour this week, but now we also have a roster to chat about. So now you and I are going to go a little back and forth on this and maybe go over the names that we're seeing on them, the names that we don't see on it. Let's take a look at this roster. I'm going to go ahead and just rattle off some names here for you folks, just so you can, get reminded of who's on there or who's not. 23-player roster for April friendlies against Uzbekistan coming up in April. 3 goalkeepers, Bella Bigsby, Aubrey Kingsbury, Alyssa Nair. 7 defenders, Alana Cook, Abby Dahlkemper. We've got Imani Dorsey, Emily Fox, Sophia Huerta, Naomi Girma, Kelly O'Hara. Midfielders with 8, Lindsey Herrera, Jalen Howe, Rose Lavelle, Katerina Macario, Christy Mewis, Sam Mewis, Ashley Sanchez, and Andy Sullivan. And for the forward core, running out with 5 with Ashley Hatch, Mallory Pugh, Margaret Purse, Trinity Rodman, and Sophia Smith. Before we get into this, I want to get your thoughts on this, Lori, because I think we knew already going into this announcement that there were going to be 2 pretty big names not on this roster. We got Chicago Red Stars and Kansas City Current putting out, season-ending injuries to these 2 players for their respective clubs. And we knew right away we weren't going to see them on this roster. Your thoughts on them not being able to be a part of this team?
yeah, I mean, well, one, it's a bummer, right? Anytime you see major injuries to any player is just, it's disappointing, it's saddening, and the fact that, like, how much effort and preparation and everything that goes in behind the scenes and how much these players love the game. So for them to have to be out and then now, turn their attention to rehab and the surgery prior, it's just a lot. So, and it's mentally and emotionally challenging, but, on the brighter side, if there is one, not necessarily for these players, but for others, it's something that Vlatko Andonovski said. It opens up some spots for some other players. And that's what this league, it is one of the aspects it's all about, is allow players to be in competitive environments. And then when they get their chance, to make the most of it. And so these slots are opening up for some players.
Yeah, we're looking at 23 players in terms of this overview, right? We're obviously targeting the 2 big names in terms of the most recent news of them not being available. But there's maybe some other things within this roster that we can go through and maybe ask, some questions of this roster, especially going up against the opposition that they're going to be facing with Uzbekistan, right? There's already been a ton of conversation once these friendlies got announced. They're a lower ranked team. I believe it's 48th overall, right? And then this is the top ranked team in the world. So there was already maybe some of that perspective going into this prior to this roster drop that, hey, maybe based on the opposition, we might see a similar roster that we have been seeing over the last few months, over the last several international windows, right? With certain names that Vlatko Andonovski still wants to continue to see and evaluate moving forward. When you're looking at this roster and we're seeing the familiarity, what stands out to you across this roster, like in terms of players who maybe are making a return into the mix of things?
Yeah. I look directly more at the attacking players, in particular Trinity Rodman, Ashley Sanchez, Mallory Pugh being back in the mix. I think those three players, Mal Pugh, the start that she's had already in the first two games, I think she's been just magnificent. Really, just a different confidence than we've seen her. We started seeing her grow into that last season, but really starting off with like a wonderful goal, and then also just just with her play in general. And then with Ashley Sanchez and Trinity Rodman, we know the season they had last year. Ashley Sanchez in particular, another one that started off, I think, in such a bright spot this year. So I'm looking at those because when we think about big names again that aren't on this roster, you think about Megan Rapinoe, Alex Morgan, Kristen Press. So these players are the ones that are coming in and filling those vacant spots. And, honestly, it's massive for those players because you see the confidence that they're building by getting that experience in this camp and then now bringing that back to their NWSL clubs and then performing at the level that their ceilings allow for them to.
I want to chat a little bit maybe about the defensive side of things, right? Maybe we can go line by line or position by position, right? When we're looking at the goalkeepers here, we're seeing the return of Alyssa Nair, right? She had already gotten some matches, got some minutes under her belt during the She Believes Cup, getting back into the mix of training camps with this senior level roster after sustaining that injury in the Olympics. But we're also seeing the return of Thorns goalkeeper Bella Bigsby and Spirit goalkeeper Aubrey Kingsbury. We don't see Casey Murphy in this mix at the moment. She is a goalkeeper who has been named to some of these rosters, but she's been dealing with what the North Carolina Courage have been listing on the availability reports as a right knee injury. So she has been out for these last couple of weeks for the Challenge Cup matches, and it looks like she's not going to be part of these April friendlies for the team. When you're looking at these goalkeepers, is there anyone that you're looking to see get a start against this Uzbekistan side?
That's a good question. And it is a bummer not to see Casey Murphy after how she's done in the recent games and the recent call-ups with the national team. You know what? I wouldn't be surprised, though, if we see Alyssa Nair get some more minutes back in, maybe get a start at least in one of these games. And then I think at this point in time, we're seeing Bella Bixby, as you just mentioned, get back in. But I would like to see Aubrey Kingsbury get an opportunity. She's been called into some camps and, has proven herself, done well with the Washington Spirit. So I think at least in one of these two games, I would like to see her get the start and see how she kind of performs at this level.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think what we saw out of this player, I think even at the tail end of 2021, right, in terms of those Australia friendlies and then rolling in to 2022, Casey Murphy showing she can hang with that goalkeeper union, right? So hopefully that knee injury is more just sort of a precautionary tale of just sort of taking things slowly and seeing how things go along. But, when this type of stuff happens, right, they're kind of presented as opportunities, right? So we'll see what happens. Kingsbury has gotten a couple call-ins, right? Has gone up in training, I'm sure, against some pretty high-flying attacks against her Spirit teammates in Rodman and in Sanchez and in Hatch. So I think when it comes to the opposition in this match, when we're looking ahead to Uzbekistan, I would like to maybe see one of these games go to Kingsbury, maybe at least get a half in, at least to just sort of see how we're looking here. Something else that we need to talk about a little bit in terms of big names, right? When it comes to this teams, or maybe not the biggest names. It depends on who you're talking to or who's a fan of who, right? But when it comes to familiar names that have been with this team for a very long time, I know we've been covering this team as extensively as we have. We've been in those press conferences with Vlatko Andonovski. He's mentioned that this window of time, that these last several months and a couple months moving into the future here ahead of CONCACAF qualifiers, that he wants to utilize a lot of these matches, a lot of these international windows to ensure that players who are part of a larger pool continue to get more evaluation, right? And continue to get more time in the pitch. And he has been asked relentlessly by media, right? As we've heard and seen in some of these cases, where's Kristen Press? Where's Alex Morgan? Where's Megan Rapinoe? Have you talked to them? What's the conversations like? And he has he has answered these same questions multiple times, and I think in his most recent conference, he made the joke about like, hey, like there's a reason why you don't call in certain players
Mhm.
any more, and then he made the joke about Amia Hamm or Julie Foudy. But then he further expressed like, that these players wanted to see them getting time with their NWSL clubs, right?
Mhm.
So when we're looking at a player like Kristen Press, when we're looking at a player like Alex Morgan, just getting a couple weeks out there in terms of actual matches
Mhm.
with their new respective clubs, are you like in agreement that this maybe isn't the window to see those type of big names, considering that these are two friendlies against Uzbekistan? Or are you looking to maybe see those type of players get into a camp like this and go against a team that they haven't faced before?
Yeah, no, I actually think that it makes sense that they're not in. At first, I was a little bit thinking that at least a Kristen Press would get back into the mix with how she started the Challenge Cup in the first two games. She looks lively, she looks healthy, she looks like she's having a lot of fun. I thought at least she would get a call in for
Yeah.
sure. So I was a bit surprised on that, just to get her back into the mix. And I
Yeah.
think, one thing that Lisa and I talked about last night in the new segment is, having a little bit of that balance between some of the veteran players and some of the new experience. And, I think a player like Becky Sauerbrunn has provided that. She's not even in this camp. So a little bit surprising in that, to just how long Kristen Press has been out, but then also completely makes sense as well. You have a lot of injuries. You need to get players time because you have some, as we've mentioned, that are going to be out for a significant amount of time. So you have
Yeah.
to be able to give players, what Kristen Press can provide you.
Yeah.
So continue to get experience. I mean, we knew that in case of point, it's like a Trinity Rodman, right? Wasn't originally on the She Believes Cup. Then there was an injury. She's brought in right away, right? So
Yeah.
just keep giving these players, and there's only 4 matches until they have to choose the 4 national team matches for the choose a World Cup qualifying roster. So
Yeah.
not a lot of significant time together. And again, what you can get from some of these veteran players. Really have to get a good look at what players, how they can perform against different teams moving forward.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think with such a limited window of games, this is really the time that the coaching staff has to try to continue and evaluate some of these players ahead of that qualifying competition that's going to take place this summer, right, in July.
Mhm.
And it's going to be away. They're going to be going to Mexico, right? So they really want to try to settle things out. But I'm a little curious. I think you brought up a really good point about Trinity Rodman. I'm with you on that. I do wonder if maybe like the timeline of things with the naming of this roster, right? The making the phone calls, the sending
Mhm.
out the emails to players, like telling them like, hey, like we want you as part of this camp. I do wonder with the timeline of things now with Lynn Williams and her injury being announced very, very recently, right on the tail end of Davidson's injury announcement. I do wonder if maybe there's already conversations being had about possibly getting players into this camp and growing it a little bit more. So I'm a
Mhm.
little bit curious if maybe after some of these performances, maybe we're gonna have a midweek match that happens in Challenge Cup. Maybe there's going to be an extra email that's sent out or an extra phone call that's made like, hey, like how about getting into this senior camp with us and ahead of Uzbekistan? So whether or not there is still time to get somebody like a Kristen Press, into the mix of things, and like you said, at least start reintegrating
Yep.
yourself back into the mix in terms of moving on from names, familiar names that are missing, but surprising names back in the mix for this roster. Who's standing out across this roster as players who are sort of are those ones reintegrating back with the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think, getting Emily Fox continued minutes. I wouldn't say she was really somebody that you've reintegrated because she's been in the more recent camps. But I mean, she's been excellent
Yeah.
with Racing Louisville as well. I mean, that's a much needed position, one of the outside backs. So I'm happy to see her continue to see when she went down with that injury the other night in their game. You could see how important she is, right? And just in terms of the
Absolutely.
what she brings and solidifies in their back line. So it's good to see her in the mix as well. Sam Mewis is one limited minutes right now
Yeah.
with Kansas City Current. So I would like to see her to continue to get more minutes and kind of get back to the Sam Mewis that we're used to seeing, right? Which is like her
Mhm.
range of passing, her ability to be able to open up games. I mean, when you look at like collectively outside of a Lindsey Herrera, and yes, and Andy Sullivan, and I'm now going to add in like 3 more players, a Jalen Howe, but
Yeah.
those are different players, right? Like than
Yep.
a Sam Ewis. So I would like to see a bit more of like a Sam Ewis of like the 99. I said this last night, 1999. Goodness gracious. I'm all over the place. 2019 World Cup, where Sam could like drop deeper, open up the game. We haven't seen that, in my opinion, in the most
Yeah.
recent years with her. So she's a player that I would really like to kind of see integrated back in that way.
Right on. I think I'm with you on that. You know, watching the Challenge Cup and United States women's national team players within it, when you're looking at someone like Mewis, I was kind of keeping an eye on that sort of, minutes restriction, right?
Yep.
Having that week 1 going 45, I thought, okay, like maybe against Chicago, like maybe we'll see growth in that. Maybe we'll see like 60 minutes, but it was 45 and 45 for those opening 2 weekends. So I'm with you on that. I'm a little curious to see, how she's going to be doing, or what the conversations are going to look like, with that midfielder specifically ahead of facing Uzbekistan, or is this still going to be those types of friendlies where Vlatko Andonovski is like, okay, kids, here are the keys, take the car and run, like, are we going to see a player like Howell maybe get tasked, as part of that minutes restriction? Like, is Sam Ewis going to go 45, and is Howell going to come in, and maybe they adjust some things a little bit in that middle third? In terms of the back line, I know we're looking at names reintegrating themselves as well with this camp. We're seeing the return of Imani Dorsey in this roster, someone who had to unfortunately, pull out of, the January and She Believes Cup due to an injury, but having a couple Challenge Cup games under her belt, and some really good ones. Honestly, she's been really active for Gotham FC out on that flank. So she's making a return back in. And also Naomi Girma getting back into the mix here with the U.S. national team in terms of that back line, which we know is going to have some major holes, right? Especially in the center back position. No Tierna Davidson. We're not going to see Becky Sauerbrunn. Again, it's another one of these areas where it's obviously going to be an opportunity for some of these players. Who is going to step up? Who do you want to see maybe get some minutes or slot into some of these roles?
Yeah, well, not surprised about Naomi Girma. I don't think that I would make the argument that I'm not sure she would have been on this roster if you didn't see Tierna Davidson or Becky Sauerbrunn out. But that is the unfortunate reality for those players that are injured, but also a blessing for Naomi Girma to be able to get in and make her case, right? I mean, that's what it's all about, is taking your chances. But really, the person or the player that I have my eye on is Sofia Huerta. I really enjoy her as a right back. I think she's building confidence in that position. And I think this would be interesting games, because typically with the NWSL, we see a much more transitional style of play. And then we come in and first time that the U.S. is going to be playing against Uzbekistan, and it's going to mirror what they're going to see in qualifiers, I think, a lot. Not necessarily teams just completely sitting back, but at least being in a little bit more of a medium block. Going to be difficult. We talk about it all the time on how the U.S. is going to break these teams down. And I think that's the test in general for all of these players, but in particular, somebody like a Huerta who likes to get forward, right? And can she bring a little bit of that we've seen, some of her sophistication and being able, what ball she's playing in, who is she combining with? We've seen her pinch in more centrally with OL Reign, which I really enjoy. She scored a great goal off of her ability to get inside in their opening match in the Challenge Cup. So really, I think it's about her positioning that I'm looking forward to, and what she can bring, because that position to me is wide open. We don't see Emily Sonnet on the roster either. So this is a great opportunity, I think, for Huerta to be able to, make a case of her getting quite a bit more minutes and at least a couple starts in these next 2 matches.
Yeah, it's been absolutely like quite the story arc to sort of follow, right? When it comes to an individual player and their individual performances, with the national team, sort of, years back, we're talking 2017, right? Sort of getting into the mix, and being tasked with some different things positionally, and then just sort of fast forwarding to 2021, right? And being with OL Reign. being connected with somebody like Laura Harvey, someone who is not unfamiliar with the U.S. National team in terms of their needs and what they're looking for. And having a coach like Harvey kind of recognizing those things, right? Maybe putting two and two together and saying, you know what, I got a lot of talented players here on this Reign side. I know Sofia Huerta isn't unfamiliar with this fullback position, but we got to start getting her some times. And maybe it was one of those like high risk, high rewards types of things. And we saw it later down the stretch in 2021 with Huerta getting more time at this position, almost kind of like getting stronger game by game, right?
Yes,
and now we're here in 2022, and she's got a couple games still at that same position, with OL Reign, and still making an impact for club, right? And then seeing some of that kind of translate onto the pitch at the international stage at the senior level, which is going to be huge for this team if they end up kind of starting to solidify that role, which I am in agreement with you. I think it's a little bit wide open right now. So she's absolutely a player, I think, on that defensive line that people have to keep an eye on. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe someone like an Amani Dorsey also gets some time at that role, with 2 matches that are coming up into play. Because what we've been seeing out of Amani Dorsey over these last couple of weeks in Challenge Cup, when we're looking at the activity from Gotham's line, it's even just sort of seeing like that specific player and their passing map, right? And just kind of outrageous. So I'm excited to see some combo of Huerta and Dorsey getting some time out on the pitch. Maybe to close things out, let's show some love to the forwards a little bit, right? Let's talk attack. Let's talk goals. Listen, one of the first narratives coming out of the announcement of these friendlies was like Uzbekistan. There better be some goals. Like that was the kind of, the perception that some people were having when the announcement was made. They were like, this is going to be the first time that either of these teams have played each other in their respective programs' histories. And not only that, you have a number 1 going against a number 48. So a lot of folks are going to be looking at these 5 forwards for now saying, produce some goals. So when we're looking at this forward line, Lindsey, who's sticking out and who do you want to see have an impact during this international window?
Well, the 2 that really stick out right now is the 2 that I've been incredibly impressed with early on in these Challenge Cup games, which is Sophia Smith and Mal Pugh. I think that they have been, their movement, their ability when they're on the ball is dangerous, their movement off the ball. And I would say neither Chicago nor Portland looks the way they do or is performing in the way that they are without those 2 players. They would look completely different. And I think they draw so much attention. So those 2 players, I would like to see what that looks like in these 2 matches. Again, going back to kind of the same, not much has changed. There's a reason why, obviously, COVID restrictions and stuff that we've talked about, getting teams over here. There's a lot that goes in, right, who comes over and plays. We know
Absolutely.
that. But also, there is something to be said about these teams being tight defensively and mirroring, as I mentioned, what some of the qualification teams are going to look like. And how do these players create space? What does their movement look like when there's not as much space? Because the game against San Diego for Portland the other night, it was a pretty transitional game, fun to watch, exciting, but that opens up and plays right into Sophia Smith's hands because she's agile, she wants to move, she's direct, she wants to take players on, whether she's just running to get into a position in goal or she's with the ball. So not going to have that much room. So how can she create? How can she link up? Can we get a little bit more nuanced and precise with our final passes, with our combination play? So those 2 for sure I'll be looking for. But also Catarina Macario, listed as a midfield. I don't really care where she's listed. She's been playing as like a withdrawal 9. I think that's I really like that role, especially depending on who's playing underneath her. I think Ashley Sanchez has proven that she can make those runs in behind. So it's really, to me, less about maybe the individual player, but the mix that Vlatko puts in and start to see who's really working together. Because we've seen for Washington, Trinity and Ashley linking up really well with some fun little combination play. But can others start to do that, right? So that's more is what I'm looking for. Just a bit more precision, being a bit more decisive, and who can bring that together in terms of combination play.
Yeah, I'm with you 100% when you're talking about Pugh and Smith and what they mean to their respective club teams. With only the 5 forwards listed, I love that you brought up Katerina Macario, right? Someone that we've been sort of seeing play in kind of that lower role a little bit alongside this attacking core, right? That's presented, on the pitch. I would like to see that with the forward specifically with 5 listed, right? I think I'm going to be looking, yes, at who starts and who's going to be getting the time. Are Pugh and Smith going to continue to build on what they've been producing for this national team? But looking at players like Hatch, Purse, Rodman, along with them, and the 2 friendlies that are here, I'm wondering if we're maybe even going to continue to see a little bit of those line changes, right? That we've been seeing from Vlatko Andonovski. He loves a hockey line change, in some of these matches. So will there be a duo that comes out and a duo that comes on? Are we going to continue to see that moving forward? I'm going to be looking for it for sure. It's an exciting time. I'm going to maybe ask you some hard-hitting questions here. I'm going to ask you to put on your gambling hat, so to speak. If you had to put a number on it, when we're talking Uzbekistan versus United States versus Uzbekistan, we're talking about the roster that's in front of us now, that we see who is going to be the team that's going to be getting those runs out there. When you're looking at all that, if you had to put a number on it, if we're talking about goals here, what do you want to see coming out of this match? Is if they come out in this match and it's a 1-0 win, is that disappointing for you?
Yeah, I think it's disappointing because of just what we talked about, really, which is, I think, no doubt, the players that have been selected, the players that haven't been selected that we've seen on a number of these rosters, this team is at its best when it's scoring goals, right? When it's on the front foot, when it's, there's combination play, there's excitement, they're finding space between the lines, there's fluidity in the movement. And I think against a team like Uzbekistan, who doesn't have a ton of experience, right, playing against, or no experience playing against the number 1 team in the world, then that we expect to see goals. We expect to see goals from this team. However, it's more about what leads up to the goals, in my opinion, and the finishing product would be just the icing on the cake. Because if we are seeing that fluidity, if we were seeing better balls whipped into the box, right, that are dangerous and not just floated in and are hopeful, if we are seeing maybe different textured balls that are like maybe not in the air, right, maybe they're whipped across, right, in behind, or cutback balls, then no doubt will we see goals, in my opinion. So 1-0 would be disappointing for sure, and I think that would be disappointing across the board for everybody that's called in. However, it is a bit more about the control of the game and getting more players involved. And as I mentioned, like somebody like a Huerta, right, who we know can get in. So I don't know if I could put a number on it, but to me, I'll be looking for more of that, yes, cutting edge. These players are called in for a reason, right? All the things that we've just mentioned, because they've been started off really well. They deserve this call up for their play in the league. Exactly what we expect from this league. And I hope they build on that confidence for themselves, because this should be fun, right? It should be fun. It should be fun and exciting time. We're a year out from the World Cup, hopefully, because we qualify, right? So it's more about, for me, seeing that joy and another level.
Yeah, I'm here with you for sure, especially with this group of players, right? This younger group of players, this sort of expanded pool of players that Andonovski has been calling in. You want to see that. You want to see him having fun. You want to see him, finding joy on the pitch. Both in their individual performances and also with their own, teammates with they're there, collectively as a unit. But it's going to have to happen with a whole team performance, right? We're going to want to continue to see the continued development of some of these younger forwards. You chatted a little bit about Macario. We're going to want to continue to see that as well, especially alongside Rose Lavelle. We started to see something special kind of brewing there, but unfortunately in those previous matches in February, Lavelle coming out as a precaution, and we saw Macario continuing to sort of build out, and then had a couple bangers of her own, right, in She Believes Cup. So hopefully with these two kind of reuniting in the national team camps, maybe we can continue to see a little bit more of that development moving on. But I'm with you. I don't think we can put a number on it, but I would love to see, definitely, I would be disappointed if it's like a 1-0 type matches. I want to see multiple goals here. I want to see some fun.
Yeah, I'll just add to one point because I think you make I like what you said about Katarina Macario, and she came to life in the She Believes Cup. I think there's one aspect of like, yes, can we find that cutting edge? These young players coming in and now knowing like, hey, you might not get a ton of chances at this level. You have to be able to put those away. And I think we started to see that after a little bit of an extended period of time for like a Macario. When is she going to break out? When is she going to break out?
Yep.
Now, can you add on to that, right? And continue to like really start to take hold of this team.
I love it. We're going to be watching for it. We're going to do recaps of it. We're going to do previews of it. We're going to be here with all of the coverage for United States women's national team moving forward. Hey, everybody. Thank you all so much for joining us. We appreciate you as always, jumping in on the live, hitting us up with your comments and questions. We appreciate all the engagement as always. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of Attacking Third. Thanks for joining us on YouTube. Follow us on Twitter, and you could do that now at Attacking Third. You could do that on TikTok. For so much more, we're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, anywhere you listen to your shows. We're available as video. Hit subscribe if you're already joining us on the live. YouTube.com/Attacking Third. Thank you all so much for watching. For Sandra, Herrera, and Lindsey, this was Attacking Third.